Now that Damian Priest has already 30 days with the Money in the Bank briefcase, the probability that he's gonna cash in is increasing day by day. But what is the exact probability that he's gonna cash in at SummerSlam? Let's find out in this video. But first, let's review the database. I have considered all the winners and also the ones that didn't actually cash in his Money in the Bank briefcase, and all the days that they have hold the Money in the Bank briefcase, and also if they were successful or not. They and all of the people that have already held the briefcase help me actually build this chart, where in the x-axis we have the years that the Money in the Bank briefcase was won, and on the y-axis we have the days that were held. If you can see, there are some outliers, for example Edge, Dolph Ziggler, and Seth Rollins, the ones that actually held the briefcase for the most amount of time, but we also have some outliers and the ones that held the briefcase for the shortest amount of time, for example Edge, Kane, John Cena, and Dean Ambrose. The blue points actually reflect those that were successful at cashing in, and the red points were the ones that fail at cashing in. Damian Priest is at yellow, so he can be different. With this data, I can tell you that on average, that any WWE superstar holds the briefcase for 96 days. And also with this data, I can tell you that any superstar would have a 72% chance of being successful at cashing in. With all this data, having also the average, having also the size of the population, and the standard deviation, I build a confidence interval. And I can tell you with 99% of confidence that the cash-in of Damian Priest should happen between 79 and 113 days. If this cash-in is gonna happen at a pay-per-view, the only pay-per-view that is coming between September 17 and October 21 is Fastlane. That's an interesting thing to have in mind. With all this data, I build the accumulated probability to see what is the probability of cashing in at SummerSlam, which actually is 35 days, and that probability is just 28%, which makes sense because as long as time goes by, when it reaches near the 300 days mark, the probability is above 90%, which actually means that it's almost certain that at any time the cashing is gonna happen. But at this time, for SummerSlam, the probability is only 28%. But I found something very interesting if you want to hear a little bit more about the data. I found two patterns that actually are reflected in this image. On the left green box, you can see that there are more outliers or extreme cases. If you can see, it's Edge and Dolph Ziggler having the most amount of days, but we also have more cases with the least amount of days. For example, Edge, Kane, John Cena, and Jack Swagger, which is different from the yellow right box where you can see less amount of outliers, only having, for example, Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose. With this in mind, I isolated the points from 2005 to 2012, and I found that on average the superstars were holding the briefcase for 87 days. And if you can see the red points, there are just very few red points. That actually means that any superstar in that period of time would have had an 85% chance of being successful. And with that in mind, the probability of cashing in at SummerSlam, that means at 35 days, would have been 62%. That's pretty high. That only happens because between 2005 and 2012, a lot of cash-ins happened pretty early. But now let's see what happened between 2013 and 2022. The pattern has changed because on average, the WWE superstar were holding the briefcase for 105 days. That's actually 20% more than the previous case. But there are actually more red points, as you can see in the image. That means that during this period, the chance of being successful is just 58%. That is a lot less than the previous 85%. It's just 58% from 2013 to 2022. And for those data points, I recalculated also the accumulated probability line, and I actually got that for a cash-in at SummerSlam just a 35 under 35 days, the probability of cashing in would have been just 17%, which is a lot less than 62% that was the previous case. That actually makes sense because now the superstars are holding the briefcase for a longer period of time. But WWE is not gonna act on data, but it's gonna act on the storyline. And if the storyline makes sense, that's where Damian Priest is gonna cash in. So I hope you enjoyed this little exercise with data. Um, it was pretty interesting to me actually. And if you want to see this other video reviewing all the winners and losers also of the Money in the Bank briefcase, just check it out. And if you like, please share, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.